Back again after Tuesday's session talking about intuitive eating, the first 5 principles. And today we're going to talk about the second 5 principles. And we'll go back over what intuitive eating is again after we introduce Marianne and Diane. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am Tara Leonard. I'm a clinical health coach, board certified, also a clinical instructor of behavioral health and nutrition at the University of Delaware, and a clinic director for the Clinical Health Coaching Research and Training Center, also located at the University of Delaware at Star Campus. What we need to do first is to talk a little bit about NAMI Delaware. I'm going to throw in our disclaimer, and then I'll bring in Marianne and Diane to talk about intuitive eating. So this session is offered by NAMI Delaware. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI Delaware is a state agency affiliated with the national organization NAMI. There are NAMIs in every state, so if you're watching this from outside of Delaware, you can find your closest NAMI by visiting their website, nami.org. You can find out what programs are available there, just right near you. NAMI Delaware offers support groups, education and awareness programs, advocacy, and housing. During COVID-19, their programming has switched to virtual formats like this one on Facebook Live. They're holding their support and social meetings online using Zoom. You can learn more about NAMI Delaware at their website, namidelaware.org, or by calling their helpline. The number should be streaming below on the screen. Before we introduce ourselves, the rest of us, and then start our presentation, we want to remind you of one more thing. You are not alone. This experience we're having with COVID-19 is unlike anything we've ever experienced before, and it may feel overwhelming at times. Please know that there are resources available to you 24/7 should you need to talk to someone. You should see the crisis text line number on the screen below. This is just one way to reach out and connect, but there are others as well. If you're looking for more resources, you can check out NAMI Delaware's resources list on their website. So moving forward, let's go ahead and bring Marianne and Diane in to introduce themselves.
Hi, it's wonderful to be back. My name is Diane Bennick. I'm a clinical health coach at the Clinical Health Coaching Research Training Center at the University of Delaware with Tara. My background is in nursing, and I'm certified nationally in health and wellness coaching.
Hi, and I'm Marianne Eastap. I'm a registered dietitian, and I work at the nutrition clinic at UD Health on the Star Campus at the University of Delaware, and I'm also a certified intuitive eating counselor.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about intuitive eating again, and then maybe just talk a little bit about what we talked about last on Tuesday about the first 5 principles?
All right, so we'll recap what we talked about on Monday and try to make it a little bit more simpler. So last time we talked about intuitive eating being a non-diet approach or strategy to health that really relies on your internal hunger and satiety cues rather than situational or emotional cues. And it is based on 10 principles that were developed by 2 dietitians, Elise Resch and Evelyn Triboli. And their work has been validated by the work of Dr. Tracy Tyka from the Ohio State University. So it is evidence-based and based on these 10 principles that we'll recap today, the first 5 that we did, and then we'll talk about the other 5. So I love this type of approach, a non-dieting approach, because it really allows somebody to move away from restrictive diet and really let themselves be the boss of themselves. And you know, it's an inner journey. It's something that they can heal their relationship with food.
Did you want to say the 5 principles that we talked about?
So yeah, we can go over the first 5 that we talked about. And the first one is, just like I was kind of alluding to, rejecting the diet mentality. And when you are able to reject that diet mentality, it really will free yourself from to become an intuitive eater. We were all born as intuitive eaters, believe it or not. When you're babies, you eat when you're hungry, you will stop when you're full. But diet culture has been ingrained in us over the years, social media, and we forget these simple intuitive eating instincts that we have. So really being able to reject that diet mentality and get rid of the restrictive diets and rigid plans that people may follow will really allow you to get back to that intuitive eating that you were born of and that you're born with. And you get to be the boss of you. You get to tell yourself when you're going to eat because of your hunger, rather than worrying about a diet saying eat this at 10 o'clock and eat this at 4 o'clock, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the first principle. And principle number 2 was honoring the hunger. And we talked about the hunger scale of 1 to 10 and really trying to keep your hunger in a range of 3 to 7. 3, you're hungry, but not hangry. And I always like this phrase when I talk about the hunger, honoring the hunger, is preventing the hangry, preventing getting starving where you're ready to eat anything that's in front of you. So if you can find out what a 3 on that hunger scale feels like from you, and then that will help you stay in that range where 7 is a fullness that feels good to you, rather than being on 1 being extremely hangry and starving, and 10 being Thanksgiving stuff. Keeping yourself in that 3 to 7 range will really be able to, 1, you'll be able to understand what hunger feels like for you. And then you can respond to that hunger appropriately too, without being hangry. Because when I'm hangry, I eat everything in sight really quickly, and then I'm Thanksgiving stuffed afterwards. So trying to get back to that, preventing the hungry. The third principle is making peace with food, where we encourage people to get rid of your good food, bad food list. There are no forbidden foods. And we know this from habituation research that says the novelty of something wears off after repeated exposure over time. So we can apply that to food. If you're always restricting yourself, no, I can't have candy, no, I can't have carbs, no, I can't have this, then this is that deprivation is going to trigger yourself into wanting and craving. And then that leads to binges too. So making peace with the food is going to help you get back to that, again, intuitive eater in yourself too. So we really want to have people getting rid of attaching a reward value to certain foods that we've been taught to do for so long too. And then the fourth principle is challenging the food police. And this is telling people, if you could really rid yourself of the judgment from others as well as yourself, those inner voices that are inside your head that's saying you're bad if you do this or good if you do that, it can really lead you to become that the intuitive eater. But also there is the what the hell effect. This is the brain inside. You ever hear the what the hell effect? Oh, I a couple donuts, what the hell? I blew my diet. I'm just going to eat the rest of the bag, right? And or the last supper mentality, whereas, oh, I'm going to start my diet tomorrow. I'll be good tomorrow, but I'll eat everything in front of me. That's the last supper, trying to get everything in before you start that diet. So if we can really get rid of those voices in our head, that will be a step towards becoming that intuitive eater. And the fifth principle that we talked about is on the other part of that hunger scale, the fullness. So it's really a hunger and fullness scale, but really kind of finding out what a satisfying fullness feels for you. Now, I know when I'm Thanksgiving stuff and number 10 on that scale, I feel gross. I don't feel good. It doesn't feel good. So around a 7 is where most people feel good, but that's individual. That's very different. And so it's different from me. So fullness could be less thoughts about food or a slight distension. So it's very different in trying to get that. And we talked about a couple strategies with that, taking a pause during the meal, or that 20-20-20 guideline, just slowing your roll and really asking yourself during the meal, how do I feel? Am I stuffed? How full I am, and slowing down, because when you eat really fast, a lot of times you eat right past those cues that you're getting full. So those were the basic principles that we talked about. And this last one, feeling your fullness, kind of slides nicely into the first number 6 principle too. Should I go right into that?
Number 6, I remember, is discover the satisfaction factor.
Yes, it is. So the Japanese have the wisdom to include pleasure as one of their goals for healthy living. So in our busy society and our fury to want to be thin and to be healthy, we forget about one of the most basic gifts of existence, and that is being able to be satisfied and please and enjoy a meal. We forget to do that in our busy society. But when you can really eat, give yourself that permission, really eat what you want in a conducive and satisfying environment, it can be a powerful force in helping you feel the satisfaction and the contentness of that meal too. So while you're able to do that and provide that satisfaction and the pleasure, you might even find that you will need less of a food to keep you satisfied. So I'm always surprised at how much less I eat at a mealtime when I'm really zoned in on this, my hunger, my fullness, and what the food tastes with. And some people think like, I just don't like the food. No, it's not about that at all. I'll take it home and eat it the next day. But it's really, I just need less to satisfy me. And if we apply this to some of those foods, those good foods and bad food lists that we used to have, and really just taste it and enjoy it, you might find that you don't need to eat the whole sleeve of Oreos to feel that satisfaction. Maybe 1 or 2 will give you that same satisfaction. So going back and asking the questions, did I like the food? How did it make me feel? And then 3, would I choose to eat this again? And so many people have come back and told me that, it wasn't what I thought it was. It's not all what it's cracked up at being. So I do this little activity with some of my clients, is that I ask them to, and you can try this at home too, is to pick up a food, maybe one of your favorite foods. It doesn't have to be any kind of food that you want, and take one bite. Don't chew it, just leave it in your mouth. And it's an exaggerated experiment, but leave it in your mouth and just feel it. Feel the texture, taste it, feel the temperature, and notice the characteristics of this. And this is really just an activity to help you slow down and find out what's satisfying to you about that food that you're eating, and then begin to slowly eat it. So it's a little activity I like to do with some of my clients.
It also seems, Marianne, that this principle ties into that thought we talked about last week of sitting down and enjoying your meal and taking your time and sitting at a table and enjoying the conversation that you have and not rushing through it. It was really those tied together. I know for me, that's been one of the key things, is to sit down, whether it's a snack or a meal. If I sit down, it's much more mindful.
Right. And you're much more focused, and you're in that moment, and then you can pay attention to the portion sizes, but also, is it really satisfying to you? There's so many times that I'm multitasking and I eat my whole lunch and I'm looking for more because it wasn't satisfying, because I wasn't paying attention too. Right. So yeah, that's
sometimes we went to a lot of trouble to make a meal. We should sit down and enjoy it.
Yes, and taste it and savor it. Yes.
Right.
Eating is an experience. And I think sometimes we forget that it's an experience of the taste and the people that are around us and our environment. And some people are really good at sitting down and eating their food and enjoying it. And then some of us really struggle because we're fast paced all the time. So I think this is a really good one. I don't know, me personally, to hear as a reminder, be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward into our 7th principle, we wanted to talk about coping with emotions, with your emotions around eating with kindness. How can we?
Yes, this one's a loaded one, but it's extremely important for now in this crisis, this COVID crisis that we're in right now, is to treat yourself with kindness. And it goes back to Dr. Chambers' talk from last week about that self-compassion and taking care of yourself too. First, we want to recognize that over food restriction can really trigger somebody into feeling like they're out of control with their food too. And it's like an emotional eating situation too. And if we can just take a step back and try to find other ways to nurture ourselves or distract ourselves from whatever that situation may be, that emotional situation too, we know that food is not going to fix those emotions, and it's not going to take the emotions away. So if we're using food to cope with our emotions, then we're going to have a double whammy. At first, it might feel like it's okay and satisfying, but afterwards, when we realize those emotions are still there, now we have to cope with the emotions and dealing with the uncomfortable feeling with overeating, possibly, that has been happening from using those emotions too.
And one thing from a health coaching perspective, sometimes clients will actually make a list of things they could do if they realize, they're using the hunger scale, they realize they're not hungry. What other things could I do, pausing included, to not eat? And maybe it's calling a friend or taking a walk or doing yoga or finding something else that can be relaxing for you instead of eating.
Absolutely. And now, like I said before, now more than ever, we're in a different experience that we've ever had in our life before. So it's really important that we give ourselves a break here too. Don't be so harsh on yourself too. But just understanding that it's okay. Everything's a little bit different now too. Mm-hmm. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah. So, and then being kind, more, again, on the coaching side is, when we hear all this information, I don't know, for me, sometimes I think like, I want to try it all. I want to do it all. And there's good information, but just as a reminder, as we change behaviors, that we really have to have a kind of an approach that's like, what's one little thing that we can do? How do we start implementing a little bit of change? And we talk about this in a lot of programs about, low hanging fruit. Like, what's low hanging here? What's one thing that I could probably make impact pretty quickly without a whole lot of effort in making some of these changes? And so, as Diane was bringing up the strategies, all of them will be different for all of us. So, can we have the approach of, What's one little thing that's pretty easy to implement now?
And I love that phrase that you used. What's the low hanging fruit? What can I pretty much think I can handle and tackle today? That one little thing approach. I love that part. And that's really important right now, especially when social media floods us with, people are doing 16 workouts in a day and they're cooking 5 meals a day. And that might not be you. Give yourself a break. Practice the self-kindness. It's okay. Yeah.
And a lot of clients that had all these wonderful goals before the pandemic and then they were inside, oftentimes we've started over. We've said, well, what's important now? What are you looking at right now? And what will work now for you? And that's okay.
And it's finding that new normal, and I think that's an important part right here. Either we'll put ourselves on pause and we'll just get through this, and then afterwards we'll deal with it. Or what can I do right now? What can I make myself do that it's going to make me feel good right now?
Yeah, and a detour is okay. It doesn't mean that you're completely off track. It means that things have taken a different course. But like you were saying, what we have right here now, right in front of us, how do we still stay with what it is that's really important? And then even learning something new, how do we have, able to maybe look at the low hanging fruit and say, how do I implement a little bit of this and let it simmer and give it a try and see what works? I think this really is a great segue into the next one, which is number 8. We're talking about respecting our body. So once again, we go from the mind thinking like, let's not beat ourselves up, let's try one thing. And how does that impact how we feel about our body?
Right. And again, more self-care from what Dr. Chambers had been talking about too, and being kind to yourself. One way to do that is accepting your genetic blueprint, right? Most people would not think of trying to stuff a size 8 foot into a size 6 shoe comfortably, right? But yet we do this with our bodies all the time. We kind of try to have an unrealistic opinion or image of what our bodies should look like. So it's equally as futile to do this with our bodies as it is trying to stick that foot into a smaller shoe. Most importantly is respect your body so that you really can feel better about yourself. If you're overly critical about your body time and time again, it's really going to be hard for you to reject that diet mentality, because you're always going to be looking for that one last thing, maybe that one shred of hope that's out there that I can do this and it's going to make me get to that image in my head, which we really know they don't exist out there too. So now more than ever during these times, it's really important to give yourself a break and don't be so harsh, don't be so critical. We are out of our normal routine. And, again, going back to finding that new normal, what that might look like for everybody here is a little bit different.
Right. And as we talked about, self-care and kind of, we're in this moment, here we are, what are we doing? For some people, like you had brought up earlier, they're putting on, they're exercising all the time and they're making all these changes. What if maintenance is enough? We ask ourselves that. What if right now we're saying maintenance is good? And maybe I'm not moving the needle on weight. Maybe I'm not working out even more. Maybe I'm just hanging on to what it is that I have so that on the other side of this, I'm where I was and not too much has changed. I think we really need to go back to same thing with honoring our body. Let's accept our circumstances where they are and do what we can, but also understand that for some people, we talk about this at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Things are crazy and they've changed. And so with our clients, oftentimes we say, hey, what if it's maintenance? What if it's maintaining?
Right.
I love that point. And that's another point that I like to make with my clients too. At stressful, busy times in your life, you don't need to add more by being overly concerned about an rigid, restrictive diet and a certain body image that you're kind of trying to connect with. But again, getting back to that maintenance, I'm okay, pause right here. When this is over with, I can get to this part right here. So I love that point. Yeah, that's
really goes back to meeting yourself where you are now, right?
Exactly. Good point.
Right. Let's move on to number 9. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. The number 9 is movement. Feel the difference.
Yes, I love this. And I love to talk about this too. So often I think people struggle with activity and movement because they think in order to be healthy, it has to be exhaustive, calorie burning exercise or physical activity. And it doesn't have to be. We know from research, just moving more can offer health benefits, even from one little teeny bit of exercise or physical activity, we know inside physiologically, we change and adapt to that too. So trying to shift our focus from calorie burning exercise to get to a certain level, and shifting it to how that exercise makes you feel. And I tell this story a lot too, is most people that know me, I'd rather sleep than do anything in the whole world. But on Saturday mornings, my butt is out of bed at 8 a.m. and I'm on my way to jazzercise because I like the way it makes me feel for the rest of the day. Last Saturday, I cleaned my whole house, baseboards, everything. I'm like, wow, it's crazy, right? But when I can do that and that makes me feel good, I want to do it more. So it becomes something that I really enjoy and not something that I have to. If your only motivation for exercise is calorie burning, you're less likely going to be doing it. And then if it's choosing between, oh, I have to go exercise and burn calories, or I have to get out of bed and make myself get energized, it can be the difference from rolling over and hitting that snooze alarm or getting up and going out, right? So really, and again, it's shifting the focus. How does that make you feel? Or what can you do? What movement can you do that makes you feel good? And you can go out in your garden and garden. I love to do that. And that is a form of movement rather than, having to go on a treadmill or doing something that's really not fun or sustainable.
So many times we talk to people about exercise, and one thing that makes it sustainable is finding something, like you said, Marianne, that you enjoy. It can be gardening, it can be walking, it can be whatever activity, and experimenting with different ones to see which ones you really like. And one other strategy that we talk about too is coupling it with other things. Like, for example, if you wanted to walk, what could you do to make it more fun? I could walk with a friend. I could listen to music that I like. I could listen to a book on audiobook. All different ways to make it more sustainable and really more enjoyable.
I love what you say about experimenting, because I think we're in this funny space where I've talked to a lot of clients who used to work out in gyms and now their gyms are closed, or they used to meet a group of friends and walk. And so now they've had to, you have a choice. You can either get a little creative with this, or you can say, that's just not what I'm going to do right now. But I'm seeing more people saying, I wanted to try yoga. And I always just say, I just don't do it. And then maybe what we've done is we've created this space for us to be a little bit more creative and try something new with our exercise. So if we come out of it with one more tool in our toolbox, then that would be amazing.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah.
So then, as we talk about kind of being kinder about physical activity, and I really loved what you were talking about, and let's not suck the joy out of exercise or of movement. Let's make this fun. Let's experiment a little bit. What about honoring our health with gentle nutrition, which is principle number 10?
That is principle number 10. And often people ask me, well, why is that? Why do you wait to the last to talk about nutrition? And remember, what we're trying to do is get back to a healing relationship with food that has been damaged from years and years of dieting. And if we started with this principle, then it would just become another diet. So we wait here, and what we ask people is to, in the beginning of these nine other principles, is really to put nutrition on the back burner. It's still important, but now we're getting it here in principle number 10. And if we're able to really focus on making food choices that not only honor your health and your taste buds, but make you feel good, that's going to, in the long term, give you that health. And then going back to these principles about hunger and satiety, making you understand what that feels like in your body, and then making peace with the foods, and then enjoying your food. If you get back to all that, you're going to start finding that you are going to be choosing foods that are both nutritious and nourishing, as well as satisfying too. And I think that's an important thing too. Remember, you don't have to eat perfectly every single day. There's not one health professional guideline out there that says you have to eat perfectly every single day. But I see so many people striving to be the perfect eaters. And again, I think that could lead back into a dieting trend that we're trying to get out of. So in this principle too, people start getting worried when I tell them that you don't have to track and you don't have to, count your calories. You're not going to wake up tomorrow with a nutrition deficiency, right? That happens over time. So it's what you eat consistently and over time that really matters. And it's progress that counts, not just perfection. So we know there are other health consequences from choosing nutritious foods rather than just looking at a scale weight. So there's, I think you health coaches refer to as a non-scale win, right? I've heard you say that before too. So remember, weight is not a behavior, right? Weight is not who you are. And so when we just focus on that, so honoring your health through gentle nutrition and trying to make your nutrition better each day. Like tomorrow, I'm going to focus. Maybe I didn't get all my fruits into my tomorrow. I'm going to try to get an extra fruit in today, or vegetable, or whatever it is. Just kind of taking a pause and reflecting on what you did today and how can you make it better tomorrow, rather than I must eat this many ounces at this time versus this time. That's important. So if you feel like you don't have any idea of what your nutrition needs are, or what you really should be including in your diet, we have registered dietitians at our nutrition clinic at UD Health that can help with that and can help make sure that you understand what balance is. But so this is important, that you really think of nutrition as not perfection, but progress over time.
Looks like we have a couple questions before we wrap up today, Marianne.
Okay.
One person asked, if you have a chronic illness or a condition like diabetes or irritable bowel syndrome, can you still be an intuitive eater?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of time, chronic illness, some type 2 diabetes and obesity and cardiovascular disease may have resulted from not being an intuitive eater, but trying to follow an over-restricted, rigid diet. And then people break that restraint because it's too hard to follow. And then they go into different eat patterns. But we definitely apply the intuitive eating principles to these therapeutic diet needs of these individuals. Absolutely, it can be.
Good. And the other question is, what about meal prep? Is meal prep intuitive?
Oh yeah, that's good. You saw me get excited about that, because definitely, and I wanted to talk about that yesterday and I forgot a little bit about it too. So when we're talking about that hunger fullness scale, we need to take a little step back and talk about meal prep too. I'm not talking about hours and hours all over the weekend. It can be simple as 15 minutes. There's no steadfast rules to meal prepping. It is what you can do at the time you can do it. But here's my situation. If I run out the door and I don't have lunch with me, or I don't have snacks with me, and it becomes closer to lunchtime, and all of a sudden I'm a 3 on the hunger scale. If I have nothing with me to eat, I'm going to be a 2, and then I'm going to be hangry, and I'm going to be going to whoever has chocolate in the office or the cake that somebody brings in. And that's what I'm eating really quickly, because my blood sugar has dropped now and I started feeling irritable. So I'm going to grab whatever I can and eat it quickly too. So having a little bit of meal prep and planning is definitely a great skill that somebody can acquire to help them become even greater. It's part of that practice that we talked about with intuitive eating too. This could be a form of that practice and helping you get to that next step of intuitive eating. Great question.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think that one of the things when we talk about, and I know when you presented in class, we talk about intuitive eating, everyone's going, oh my gosh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be meal prepping. And
Right.
I'm supposed to be doing that. What are you doing? Well, to put it all together, what you're saying to me, or what I'm hearing, is there's no willpower required when you think a little bit ahead, and willpower is fleeting. So when people say things like, I don't have willpower, nobody has good willpower, but
especially when you're
a little bit ahead. Yeah,
right,
especially when you're hungry. So if you have something with you, it could be a little piece of chocolate.
Yeah.
But it's still, and you're enjoying the chocolate, but it's still no willpower required. So I love that you brought up the meal prep. As some people think, I don't think it doesn't apply to intuitive eating, but boy, it does.
Right. And again, there are some really good practices that people still can employ and use with intuitive eating. It's just the over restriction that we're looking to get rid of. So if you have a practice or a habit that you feel is really helpful to you, by all means, keep up with it. I'm not telling you to abandon all your good habits, right? It's just those over restrictive rules.
And with meal prep, I've had clients that some people like to prep the whole meal on Sunday for 2 hours for the whole week. Some people prep the day before. Some people prep just part of a meal for the next day. It's, again, meeting where you are and what works for you.
Right. It doesn't have to be black or white. You don't have to be all or nothing. It can be whatever you can get to.
Marianne, we have another question.
Okay.
How can someone best support the eating goals of a spouse or partner? Are there things to say or not do that can help and be supportive?
Yes. So you can be supportive, but non-judgmental, right? So having a discussion what that supportiveness looks like for your spouse or partner is going to be the first key step in offering that support. If you think you're offering advice in the guise of being supportive and that person's not ready to receive it in that way, it can be damaging, and it could be those food police that enter that person's thought. And you don't want to be the food police, right? Even if they're not doing what you think they should be doing, you don't want to become the food police. They have to figure that out for themselves of what all this means to them and how it feels to them in their body. And no matter what you can say, it may land on deaf ears too. And again, you could be a great role model and showing and practicing the 20/20 rule, or taking the pause, or, really focusing on that could be something.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever wrong to say something like, how may I best support you?
Exactly.
And just ask the question. Because oftentimes people have an answer for that one. Oh, I can tell you exactly.
What I'd like what to do too.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Question.
One other question, because Diane and I talk about this. We get these questions all the time, especially after you present some of the intuitive eating. What if someone feels that intuitive eating is not structured enough for them? How do you speak to that?
Okay, so again, I understand that because this comes from years and years of diet culture and having somebody tell you what to eat, when to eat. All right. So the best thing, if you like structure in your day, and it goes back to the meal planning too, if you like that, that's okay to have, unless it's confining to you and restricting to you, right? So if it's something that's making you feel good, if you're eating at a certain time so I'll give this example. I'm not starving when I wake up in the morning. I allow maybe an hour or two before I'm up, before I really want to get something to eat. I'm not letting myself get hangry, but I'm going to listen to my hunger cues, and that's when I'm going to start to eat, right? And then my hunger cues with my meal planning, I have a plan for when I do get hungry of this is the food I'm going to eat, not a strict rule. In fact, I leave for the work someday and I just fill up a big lunch bag of different foods, depending on what I'm feeling and what I'm in the mood for, but I have them with me. So it gives me structure throughout the day without being, you must eat this at this time, you must eat that at that time. It takes a little bit of rational thought though. If you're not hearing your hunger cues, if you're missing those cues because they've been dormant for so long, it's like hunger's knocking on the door, knock, 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 but you haven't answered it for so long, it's not knocking anymore. So those cues are dormant inside your body, and then using a little bit of rational thought to try to get those back in tune with those hunger and satiety cues is going to be important. Does that help?
I think so. Yeah, I think people are afraid of something that's not structured, as if they don't trust themselves.
Right.
This program,
and that goes back to
it goes back to trusting yourself. And what you're talking about with the hunger cues is, maybe I eat at different times than other people, and that's okay. Maybe my structure is a little bit different. The world tells us that we have to do things a certain way, and I think that it's really freeing to hear that we don't.
Yes.
That's the biggest one I hear with intuitive eating is I don't trust myself to do this.
Right. And again, it's so understandable. It really, truly is, because if you haven't taken your steps through that, if you haven't made peace with food, if you haven't really been able to listen to your hunger and respond to it, if you don't really know what fullness feels like because you're eating for emotion reasons, this is all going to prevent that trust from coming back. So it's a step-by-step building, and it goes back to the patience and the practice that I've been talking about. Again, you're not waking up tomorrow as an intuitive eater. It's going to take some time to understand what this all means to your body too. And the trust does come. People are so surprised about like, oh my gosh, I followed a diet for all the time, and I stopped following the diet, and I really start paying attention to what my body needs, and it's just such a freeing feeling.
Mm-hmm. Just going back to trusting yourself a little bit.
Yes,
exactly. Remember when you were babies, you knew
right.
what to do, right? You knew when to stop.
You knew when you're hungry.
You will get that back again. It's in there. Again, trusting that the process that you will get those cues and be able to work through this and heal that relationship with food and get back to being an intuitive eater like you once were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we don't have to feel like we're going to fall off a cliff if we try some of this, and that maybe a slow approach of trying a little bit of the principles or a few of the principles, or maybe even just one. And just one thing about that principle could be a way for us to experiment with eating intuitively and see if it's something that's for us. And
Absolutely.
so then
Yes.
what would be your 3 takeaways for us from our session today?
Well, I'm going back to exactly what intuitive eating is. It's a non-dieting approach to health, right? And we're really trying to focus on what your body's saying to you and responding to that, what those needs are, and eating for hunger rather than the situation and the emotionals. And when you're able to listen to hunger and fullness and understand it, and then eat because you're hungry and not for all those other reasons too. And then the real important, and again, I know it's challenging for somebody, giving yourself the unconditional, no strings attached permission to eat what you want when you want. It can be so powerful. And again, enjoying the food. They all kind of just roll right into the other. And it really will allow you to feel alive and in control of your own destiny as far as your food, and not restrictive. And really, so many people have told me that how they feel psychologically after following us, and the evidence shows us this too. The science shows intuitive eating is associated with psychological well-being. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, who doesn't want, I mean, who wants to think about what they're going to eat all day long and feel about it? Boy, if we could have that time back, engage in other activities or think about other things, and we're not thinking about food. It sounds fun to me.
Right. Not being having to obsessively think about what am I going to eat next? When am I going to eat next? And when it's in your brain all the time and you don't have that anymore, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm hungry. It's time to eat.
And the guilt of, and not feeling guilty about what you had.
Exactly.
So it sounds like it's paying attention, but not being preoccupied, right?
Exactly. Awesome. That's a good way to put it. Good summary.
Yeah.
So, ladies, this was fun.
Yes.
Love this topic, and I think it's important for us to hear, and for people, especially at this time when there's a lot of stressful things that are out there. This might be one way to take a little bit of stress off your plate, or take one more thing off your plate, to give it a try, and to be kinder to yourself as you try a new way to eat. And we're really appreciative for NAMI having us and for giving us the opportunity to introduce ourselves to this group and know that we are here.
Can I add one thing?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I just want to add one thing, because everybody has a different relationship with food, right? So it's important to understand that intuitive eating can help somebody get back to that healthier relationship with food. And there's other professionals that can help that with, besides registered dietitians and health coaches and mental health. It can be a collaborative approach to helping somebody get back to that place too. So I just wanted to add that little bit.
Some of our most successful clients are people like you just said. You have a triangle of people helping you. Comes from all angles.
Right.
That's right. We're a team.
Yep.
We're a team.
We're a team. So you see what the line that's going on underneath for Nutrition Clinic at UD, and also for the Clinical Health Coaching Research and Training Center, so you know how to contact us. And again, thankful for you being here today, and hope you're not too wet with this rain.
Yep. Thank
you.
you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.